Hey everyone, Duke Nuka 3D here with another mask for you guys, and I have gotten several masks recently. My good buddy Moulash paid me a visit, I believe yesterday, yeah, it was yesterday, and we chatted, traded, and, just generally did collector things, so I have wound up with a decent amount of new pieces that I'll be able to make reviews on now due to the lack of content, which has been plaguing my channel for at least a good couple weeks, so anyways, without further ado, today I have for you this MSA Clearvue gas mask, I guess. That's really all there is to it. I've never actually held one of these or fiddled around with one prior to Moulash's visit, so this is kind of a new experience for me. And there are a lot of things about the design that I didn't even know or realize were like, so I'll get into that when I can. But first, the history. These were designed sometime around the 1960s, introduced as MSA's flagship respirator to replace the earlier All Vision, which had been in service since probably the 1940s. These lasted a decent amount of time, probably into the 80s or even the 90s at most, but pretty much got phased out once the UltraView hit the scene in the 1970s, so these didn't last too long, but they were still around. This particular model is a black high car model, which are a bit more uncommon than the green ones you will more commonly see. It's a little dirty. Well, it's a lot cleaner than it was originally, but yeah, it's still kind of used and beat up, but it's not displayable and complete nonetheless, and in very decent condition otherwise. So the design is pretty interesting. You have this flat metal plate which holds the lens in place, but it also has a continuous loop of wire which forms as the crimping to hold the lens and the frame in place, and that kind of just wraps around the back of the harness. I mean the lens frame here. I guess the actual gusset where the lens attaches to. You have a nice MSA logo on this bracket up here. There really isn't too many other markings on the mask that I noted. It does use a 5-point harness, so not kind of a just design, but it does what it needs to. The harness is riveted, and I know some of the rivets on this particular example are slipping a little bit, but it does not look like they are going to pull through anytime soon. The Clearvue was made in several different configurations, including this chin filter mounted model, as you see here. There's also hosed versions, and I'm pretty sure there was models to be used with like continuous supplied air units and just other methods of breathing and powered respiration. But this particular model is a chin canister, or co-equally known as a riot control model, and the filter that I have with it is actually designed for radioactive dusts. As you can see there, round ultra filter cartridge, part number 84305. Filter for radionuclides, or I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and highly toxic dusts, fumes, and mists. This filter removes only dyspestroids from the air. Again, I have no clue if I'm pronouncing these words correctly. It gives no protection against gases, vapors, or oxygen deficiency. And half of the label is missing, so this would probably just be a Bureau of Mine stamp or something of the like. And this is one of the weirdest filters that I've ever had my hands on. Not only is it industrial threaded, which is offset on the top of the canister instead of being in the center, it also has its own inlet valve. I don't have too many filters that have their own inlet valves built into them. It's kind of a thing that died out during World War II. But it is also extremely lightweight. There's next to nothing in this filter other than like a paper fiber filter for nuisance dusts and radioactive particles. And yeah, it's just a weird canister. I'll put it on the mask in a minute, but I'll show off the rest of the face piece for you. So the Clearvue has a very, very wide field of vision, as you might obviously know. Even with a nose cup, which mine does not have, but some examples do have nose cups. These offer a very decent field of view, and if these weren't such an outmoded, obsolete piece of gear, then I would kind of recommend these. But even still, I recommend the UltraView over these, just because those are 40mm and relatively recent and easy and cheap to find unissued, whereas these, I think in most cases, start around the $40 mark if they're complete sets. But I got this one for free, so it doesn't matter. The harness is just your typical MSA harness, the same type that you would see on an UltraView, so nothing really to mention there. You have a couple loops here. I believe there's one on each side. Yes, there is, and these are designed for holding a neck strap in case you want to remove the mask but have it at the ready. If you could sort of see inside the lens, there are 2 tabs right there, and those are meant to hold optical inserts. I'm not entirely sure what the Clearvue optical inserts look like, but nonetheless it can accept them. You also can see one of the beefiest TISO deflector channels in any gas mask that I own. And I'll get to that in a moment. And I might make a comparison eventually sometime, because I do know, because remember, I have a Japanese clone of this mask, which is part of the reason why Moulage kind of gave me this one, just to have a comparison, I guess. But anyways, yeah, I'll take it off the head here, and I'll show you all the finer details. So obviously there's no inlet valve on this, just a bare industrial thread, which is why there would be an inlet valve on this filter, which this one is sort of curling and dilapidating, so I may need to replace this disc with something. But yeah, it has a voice diaphragm on the front there, a very tiny voice diaphragm, but it does what it needs to. This assembly unscrews with this plastic ring, and that allows you to pop the diaphragm off. And there's a gasket here exposing the outlet valve, which interestingly is integrated into the bottom of the valve seat here. It's completely exposed underneath this cover, so this is at risk of getting dirt and dust and debris trapped in it. And the idea is the air comes through here, the diaphragm blocks off the air and forces it back down through these vents, which then in turn come out the bottom of the valve assembly through the rubber flap there on that valve disc. If you could even call that a valve disc, I guess you could. But it's weird though. It's one of the more interesting valve assemblies that I've seen on any mask, and I've never seen any mask that really uses something like that. I'm sure there are plenty of masks that do, but just none that I've ever owned. So that's interesting. Everything pretty much in terms of valve hardware is held on with your typical Tinnerman clamps. I'm not really a fan of these, but they do what they need to. I'll screw the filter on just to give you an idea of what it is like with the filter. It's going to be kind of wonky, but whatever. And again, this setup probably would have been used for, you know, just nuisance dusts and minor things. I believe during the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant accident, these were used on some quantity. However, I think mostly Ultraviews were used during that period. But yeah, I believe the cleanup crew during the 3 Mile Island incident used a few Clearvues as well as Ultraviews. I'll flip over the harness, showing the interior of the mask. If you give me a moment here, I'll do that off camera because I don't want to have my arms stretched out in front of the camera while I'm doing this. And the face piece on mine is a little bit warped, but once it's actually on my face, it doesn't really make a difference. So here you can see the interior of the mask. Notice that the harness rivets are actually painted green on the inside, so they just took a factory stock part and didn't really modify it at all. And you can also see the bluish tinge that high car masks tend to have, which is kind of an ugly feature in my opinion, but it's a black Clearvue, so I'm not complaining. You can see just how large the TISO deflectors are on this mask, just big, chunky, and very blocky. But and you also see your little nose bridge there. I'm not really sure why they include this. Usually some sort of serial number is stamped on this, like on the Ultraview or the size, but this particular one is blank, so I guess it's just there. And here is a better look at one of the optical insert mountings, and there's also a patent number right below this particular one. And there are really no markings other than that on the inside. It's just completely bare, and yeah, it is what it is. It's very, it's a pretty comfortable mask. I really don't have any problems with the design personally. There are a few odd features that I'm kind of questionable about, but I feel like this wasn't a bad mask in its day. I feel like it, you know, got a decent amount of service, but the Ultraview obviously was a much better design, and so I can see why MSA would sort of step up from this. But you know, Clearviews are nice. They're, you know, they kind of get thrown under the radar a lot, and they don't really get discussed all that much because they're not obscure masks. They're just kind of relatively benign, I guess you could say. There's really no other way to describe them other than that. They're just very benign and, you know, just disinteresting masks for the most part. But I don't know, a couple things on them kind of interest me. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I can't really think of much else to discuss on the topic of this mask. So I've got more reviews coming, so stay tuned. I'm Duke with 3D. If you have any comments, questions, corrections, or concerns, drop them below, and I'll see you all later.